Okay, let's see. Well, we got some more work to do on the Dirty 30, as I call it. I haven't got a better name for it. It's an E30 BMW convertible, a 1990 model. And well, it's a 28-year-old car, so there's always something wrong with it. One, the tachometer works when it wants to. It starts up, you usually have to tap the dash to get it working. I don't know, I guess that started like a couple weeks ago, but it wasn't working before that. And the temperature gauge, same thing. I suspect there may be a loose ground somewhere in the dash, but that's just one of many minor issues. The other one, something happened where the maintenance checking circuit went to oil service, and you can't reset it. I've reset it with the peak tool a number of different times. Power cleared it with the battery, no change. So those are minor ongoing issues that have to do with just being a 28-year-old car. However, this is what I'm going to be working on today. There are 3 different items. The first one, as you will see in a minute, is the intake manifold. Being rash, still childish at times, I decided I was going to custom paint the intake so I could make the motor look a little unique from the standard one. So I painted it. I thought it was tan. It turned out to be yellow. And I mean, like, you know, yellow. And so that's one of them. There's a coolant leak somewhere in this car, and that's been after I changed out the water pump and the timing belt and the thermostat. So there's a hose somewhere that might be a little bit loose. Sorry about this place. It's been raining for a solid month, so mosquitoes are everywhere, and they're just eating me alive. So that is one of the items, and I will show that in a minute if I can find the leak. And then the next one has to do with there's a brake lining light, and it has to do with, like, there is a sensor that goes to the brake pads on the driver's side front wheel and the passenger side rear wheel. And just to give you an idea, let me see if I can switch that around. Now, if you look underneath, there is a wire that is dangling, so it looks like that broke off somehow, and I've got to fix that. And that should fix one of the items. It may be simple. It may be just a simple matter of resoldering some wires together, or more complicated. And the next item, and you'll see what I mean when you see the intake cover. Because the other thing is, I got oil on it. It didn't want to clean off, and it's yellow. So, now look at this intake manifold. It's yellow. And I did okay with cleaning up the valve cover. The valve cover was, it was aluminum, except it had some clear coat that had gotten brown over sections of it. And so that's it. And you can see oil smudges and things like that on the intake manifold. Made it a little bit difficult. So that is what I'll be working on. Okay, the first item is I'll be disconnecting this. This is part of the primitive mass airflow sensor setup, and I will be loosening that screw loose so I can get that connection off. Then a bolt down here, and then there are, I don't know if you can see it, there's a bolt here, and then there's one here, and one there. And that should take this whole assembly off, and then I can start working my way back and probably take off this guy, which is wedged on. You push the clips and wedge them through. Same thing with that line. Those are the throttle cables, and that'll be the first item that I take care of. All right, so first piece, this bolt right there, it came off. That's like a 13. And these two items, you can see those were the 10mm bolts. Okay, and probably one of the most used items here, yes, that is a magnetic arm with a light at the end. And because God knows how many times I've dropped a nut in one of the least successful spots in the engine. So here's part one of many. Okay, for some who may be wondering, it's hard to do with just one hand, but yeah, you have to pull it back and then push this through, take tension off. It's hard to show it with just one hand, but it does come off. So a thin screwdriver moving the throttle forward and taking that off does take this off. It's fairly easy on this one. Your mileage may vary depending on how brittle these plastic pieces are. And this portion here, all three of these, let me make sure I'm doing this right. Okay, all three of these are using a 10mm socket. I have the long socket just because I have it handy, not for any good reason, just that. Now the next question, whether or not I should take this boot before getting to the throttle body, or just try and take the throttle body off. I think I'm just going to do the boot. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. You got a bolt here to take that off. You got one here. Oh yeah, this is the piece that I was worried about because it's pressed on and I had a bear getting it off and getting it back on the two times that I've jacked with this. It's not that easy to, it's a force thing, and the hose is old and I'm trying to keep it intact. So here we go. This is an interesting development. See, I take that boot off and voila, I have oil. Now this thing has been burning, well, I say it's been burning oil in that oil has been dissipating from the motor, but I'm not seeing it in the exhaust, so, and I don't see any things like milky coolant or anything like that, which would say that the oil's getting out through the head gasket or some other catastrophic kind of leak. So it's coming through the throttle body. So maybe it's PC valve, I don't know. This is an area I don't have expertise on, so we shall investigate and see. All right, so let's see, the hose here is disconnected. I got that hose, which is right here. I should replace it. Yeah, let me see if I can't find some replacement hose with the same inside diameter to put on there. Probably have to go to a boat store or something like that in order to do it. But that leaves 4 bolts. One here, one there, one right down there, and then I don't know if you can see it, there's one way up in there. There's also another hose that I just now see, but it'll come off once we get the throttle body off. I'll be able to see it, and then we can take it off. This is probably a horrible time to film because there's all this background noise with mowers and all that kind of stuff, and it's going to go on for hours, unfortunately. So bear with me. Let's see, the first, it's actually a couple things that have happened. I've been back out here to work on the car. It was interrupted. Car is jacked up. Took about 5 minutes to do. And the reason why is, well, let me take you to the other side. I have a coolant leak somewhere. I suspect that maybe this guy right here may be the cause of it. That it's draining down, or that there's a leak somewhere where this hose is clamped by this metal harness. So in order to do that, well, and the other thing is, once I pull that hose off, which I need to do in order to get the bolts on the back side of this intake manifold, coolant's going to come out. So I need to go down here, and I don't know if you can see that blue. That blue is the screw to let the antifreeze out of the radiator. It'll drain all that stuff down, but I have to lift it up in order to put the box underneath to catch it all. So I'm going to do that next. The other thing that had to happen, and it's just a minor thing, I was taking off the throttle cables, and I took off the throttle body. This is like, I guess, some vacuum pressure for the fuel. So that was taken off. And fits these guys here. There's a bracket that's held up off the valve cover, holds this guy on, and so there you go. Next step, drain the fluid. Now, of course, all these things took like a 10mm nut. It's pretty much, most of this stuff is 10mm, and I believe even these bolts here that hold the intake on. So we're getting ready to get after it. And you'll see there, I ended up taking off, there's a piece that goes under the front bumper on this car. I haven't seen them on any others, but on this car, and that was under here. It wasn't really set up right in the first place, so I'm gonna have to fix that when I get it put back in. So here we go. I'll put the screw back on that, and we shall continue. I think the next thing is this guy right here. There's a nut. I don't know that you can see it. There's a nut. It's like a 10. I know it's going to be hard to get, but there's a 10mm nut behind this ODB reader port. So there's that. I'm still curious about whether my leak is right. I mean, because when it's running, it's such a small leak. It takes about 2 weeks of regular driving before I get the low coolant light on. So, and when I saw it parked the other day, it was out for about 30 minutes, and it had a small wet spot on the concrete, somewhere in the neighborhood of the middle. So, and this is the only clue that I have, is the coolant sitting right there, which tells me it's either, it's got to be this hose coming through. There's also, I see that right? No, that's not a hose. That's the set of controls. So it's just this hose, and I'm thinking, see, this looks good though. This is the part that actually looks good, like it's been recently replaced. So it's probably somewhere along that line, and I'll have to see if there's something cut or something like that that would cause it. And that's it for now. A few things. Now, I'm probably going to get internet trolled for this, but this has got, this intake manifold on this side has got 12 intake manifold bolts they're all 12mm, and they have a washer. And since I've done this before, I know this is aluminum, yada yada yada. I pull it off with handy dandy DeWalt impact, with, just to make sure I've got the length right, handy dandy impact right there. 3-inch extension, and a deep socket that's 12mm. I don't know if you can see this. Not very good doing it with one hand. And I just zip, 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 zip. Just did it real quick for the front 6. The back 6, different story. Because of the booster and and the master cylinder for the brakes. What I needed to do is first off I needed to go hand ratchet. Where is the hand ratchet? Okay, hand ratchet right here, and the 6-inch extension. So 6-inch extension plus the deep socket, and I was able to get the next 4 from here back, those, and it was just enough that I could loosen it and then take the ratchet off, because there's not much. If I hook this up, you'll see what I mean. There's not much room here. Damn it. Why is this being difficult to me? Here, hold on a second. So, as you will see what I mean, so this puts you about 2 inches away from the master cylinder. But if you do it up here, a 3-inch socket, you don't have any turn-in radius because of all the hoses and the manifold. So that looks like the perfect distance. However, what I'm going to have here, the last 2, I'm going to have to go back to the deep socket and the short barrel, and I'm just going to have to tough it out. And you know, you're going to have like a little turn-in radius that's about like that. So you're probably going to get 2, maybe 3 clicks with the non-high performance hand tools. You know, they have there's so many clicks that you can get. The more precise ones have more teeth on their gears, so that you can actually have higher precision, from what I hear. So that's this. Okay, here's the last one. You can probably see if I squeeze it around here. It is on that last bolt, and there's no room except if I use this swivel. I normally don't like to use a swivel because you take away the leverage that you can use. Fortunately, this is aluminum, so I don't have to put a whole lot of leverage. I mean, it's just a little bit tighter than hand tight, and so Gorilla Grip's not required. And so I can put this on here, and I may even reverse where the swivel happens. See, I could take it right there, move it up a little bit, and then of course it removes more. Whenever I do that, it's going to remove more leverage, but that looks like the plan. Okay, next tricky part. For this last bolt, what after I backed it off a little bit, and I don't know if you can see it, it's still firmly on the nut. Can't seem to get it with a good angle. So once I did that, because the swivel joints are prone to drop the sockets, as soon as I got it loose, put the extension on, and I can hand loosen it from there. That's why this one is a particular pain in the butt. First time going through this was a bear, so come on. And once I do that, I'll start backing it off. I need 2 hands. Okay, and now for the mechanic's best friend. See this guy? This is a grabber that also has a flashlight at the end, and it's magnetic, and it's all flexi. So it's metal flexi, so it's not going to break on you. This is probably my favorite tool out of everything, because anytime anything drops down, I can fetch it out with this. As long as I can even come close to seeing it, I can fetch it out. And as long as it's not too heavy. I've even pulled out one of these impact sockets. So I didn't, you know, it wasn't dangling. I was able to drag it to a corner that I could see it, that I could get some leverage on it. But yeah, it's probably my favorite tool. And what it affords me to do is all these nuts have washers on them, all 12 of them. And this allows me to, let's see, as an example, I don't know if you can see it, one washer off. Just that simple. So, okay, now, at this point I believe I have all of that off. This doesn't just slide off. You see right here, this is the return pipe, and if you look further down, it's got a spring. It's spring loaded, and it's got an O-ring up here, and I don't know if you can see it from this angle. It's got an O-ring here. So supposedly, and yeah, I just have to wiggle it and crab walk it and all that kind of stuff, is you pull it out as far as it will go, you lift it up, like you rotate it this way, and then you pull it out further. So, we shall see how that goes. Okay, mental note. These two connectors will fit on each other, but it'll screw up your readings for your water temperature. So, this is just a mental note. The brown connector goes on the front, and the blue one goes on the back one. Missed the recording. Okay. This guy is held in place. There's these little tabs here on the side. I don't know if you can see them. And what I had to do is I had to go across, putting pressure to lift this guy up. Not a whole lot. You don't need Gorilla Grip. And then I would lift the tabs up inside, and I had to do this all the way across and walk it across, and then they came out, and that was the signal for the injectors. Now the injectors themselves, 4 bolts, and then they press out. Probably like maybe 10 or 15 pounds of pressure per injector. I don't know that it's really cumulative, but that's probably the greatest pressure you have. Maybe some additional friction if you're going to be. Anyway, so that's it. It should come out. Okay, now that this guy's out, maybe if I can get a close-up, you can probably see that there's smudges and stuff like that. That's from getting my hands oily when putting this in, and then I tried to pull it out and clean it, and yeah, it just wasn't working. So, plus, I found out that the paint is just absolutely the wrong color for this car. I mean, it might be if I had like yellow rims and stuff and wanted to make it outlandish, but I was just looking for it to be a little bit understated and a bit cleaner. So it's gonna go gray. And we'll see how this color turns out. Okay, I thought I'd show y'all the screw-up portion. There's actually a gasket there. The screw-up portion of the intake manifold reinstallation. Now, the tricky part is this hose. I mean, it's not a hose, it's a pipe, and it's spring-loaded way down here. And there's O-rings set on each side. Now, I had to go with like the closest O-ring that I could see that fit, because I wanted to get this thing back in gear instead of waiting several weeks in order to get a $2 O-ring. So, here's what I forgot. I had this all set in. I put in the 12 washers all the way across, and I was getting ready to bolt it up, and to my shock and dismay, I forgot to install the injectors. That's right. What makes everything go. So, and it's not a simple matter of just pressing them in. You have to press them in, and then you have all the little screws. There's 4 screws that hold it in place, and you can't do it after the fact because it actually gets in the way of the thermostat housing. So I had to pull it off. Fortunately, pulling the intake manifold off is much easier than putting it back on. Now I'm going to attempt to make this easy for the camera. I doubt that's going to succeed, but as you will notice, this center bolt is much longer than the other. So in theory, what you do is you put the intake manifold down on this just a little bit, and then this guy, which is spring loaded, Ah, dang it, it's not even aligned up. And it's supposed to be down in the tube, and then you can rotate this out just enough so that they'll wedge on, and then you can push it back. But this is the issue. This spring is a little bit stronger than I would like to have, and it doesn't actually do any aligning. So you got to get the washer and the O-ring below lined up with the base of that, which means it needs to be compressed. So you essentially need a third hand to do it easy. I don't have one, so we shall see how it goes. Okay, after all this time, I've spent like an hour on this. What an absolute bear. Here's what the trick is. This is for posterity's sake. This, see the O-ring up there? Okay. What I had to do is, I don't know if I can even get to it. Okay, that spring right there, I need this compressed all the way down, and I mean all the way. It has to be fully compressed. And then this manifold, you have it propped up over the edge and still up, and then you just rotate this down quickly and push it in, and then you can release tension off of this guy up in there, and that should fix it. Now for the easy part, putting all these 12 nuts and bolts back on it and then buttoning everything else up.